Reformed Church.
So listen, I want to talk to you about this morning, about being strong-minded. And that obviously in relation, you'll kind of get it in a second. You know, when the Lord talks about being strong in the Lord, right? Like, what does it mean to be strong? It is really the will of God for us, for each and every single one of us, to be strong people, like strong in the Bible says in Ephesians 6, in the power of his might, in the power of his strength, strong, right? The interesting thing that you'll see, though, is that the strength of God really is made perfect, or is manifested, right, well in all of its power, actually in your weakness, right? And weakness is something, I think we all can admit, weakness is not something that in the world it's looked upon to boast about. Weakness, we were talking about just last service, weakness, when people see weakness, they pick on weakness, right? They go after the weak. You've heard it said many times in the world, right, that the world is all about, survival of the fittest, right? And the weak, they just perish, right? But it's an interesting thing, the way the Lord has chosen to do things is that, you really do learn to boast in your weakness, right? Because the reality is that, it's just an interesting way of seeing weakness, right? When you realize the message that we've been preaching for so long, that it's all about what God has done and not about what you have done, you really understand that there is really only one way to be saved, and that is to be able to understand that you cannot and that he did. It's so simple. The gospel is all about emphasizing the work of Jesus Christ, right? And emphasizing your need for him, which is just weakness, right? Your need for God is just your weakness. If you could, and he did, but you could, who needs him, right? Who would need Jesus if you could by yourself, right? If you could, we don't need God. We don't need him. Just do it yourself, right? But it is really, truly all about weakness, right? But the world takes it very differently, right? There is a way to think about your weakness that's just depressing, right? In other words, when you think about your weakness apart from Jesus, right, and what he's done, it's just you can't, you're not able to, you're not going to get anywhere, you're never going to be able to do anything, you're not a good speaker, you're an introvert, you're this, you're that. So weakness is not something, if you're not seeing your weakness in light of what he has done for you, it's not a very positive thing. But Paul obviously said in many, many times, you see it written throughout Scripture, about boasting in weakness. Actually, Hebrews chapter 11 says that out of weakness they were made strong. And this is talking about men and women that brought down kingdoms, right? That subdued the forces of this world, right? That shut the mouths of powerful beasts and lions, right? This is not talking about doing things. It's not talking about natural stuff. This is talking about things that are not normally seen in the world. Like, that is the kind of power that the Lord manifests through you. Is not power that's normally seen in the world. It's power that's supernatural, right? That's not naturally seen within people that don't have the Lord, right? Supernatural things that are normally not seen. Like, it's not normal to shut the mouths of lions. It's not normal to see a sea split, right? It's not normal for one man to easily fight against 30 men like they were one man, right? It's all of these things are just not natural things, but they're all things that God wants to do through his power through you, right? Big, like massive things. To see a person that is near death and to see them made perfectly well, like there's nothing wrong with them. To see someone with a disease all over their skin and to see the Lord touch them, right? And to see their skin as clear as the day that they were born, right? To see someone that is dead and gone and their spirit out of them, to see the spirit return to them and their body made well and see them raised up from the dead. Like, these are not normal things, but they're also not things that you can do in your weakness, right? In other words, the problem, the problem, listen, from the very beginning, Adam and Eve, right? The essence of the problem that allowed sin into the world was just weakness of the flesh, which is what the devil always tries to prey on, right? Is the weakness of people's flesh. In other words, it could be a desire that you have for something, right? He accentuates that in a worldly perspective so that you become obsessed with something. In other words, always thinking about it. It's always that, always this, right? Taking things that the Lord has put in the world for our pleasure and for our enjoyment and perverting them to make them be just, I mean, let me put it to you this way. If you had one single thing in the center, right, kind of makes me think of the Garden of Eden. But if you have just the love of God in Jesus Christ, right, in just one, if you think about it like one thing in front of you, right, just the love of God through Jesus Christ, there is a multiplicity of things all around you just to distract you, lies and deceptive things that don't appear to be lies at first, right? Things that may be talking about, hey, doesn't this look good to you? I mean, wasn't that the temptation of Eve? The temptation of Eve was not kill Adam, right? The temptation of Eve was just, look at this. Doesn't it look good for you? You should take it. Right? In other words, to make you feel like deserving, to make men and women feel that they should cheat on their wives and on their husbands because they're not getting what they need or what they need there, or their love has gotten cold and they need a refreshed kind of love. You know, it's all of this stuff about feeding into just desires and things of the flesh, and all with just one single thing in mind: get your mind away from him and what he's done. That is all that this is about. All of the tricks, the wiles you hear of the devil, the tricks of the devil is just to get your mind away from him. That's it. With anything. It could be with your own weakness. It could be with your own strengths, quote unquote, something that you're good at, right? It could be anything. It's just to get your mind in any way, shape, or form away from the truth of the gospel, so that you forget the love that God has for you, so that you forget the acceptance that you have with him, so that you forget the forgiveness that you have from him, and that you seek elsewhere everything that you have from him already, or if you're not saved, what he wants to give you, that you seek that somewhere else, right? Seek that somewhere else. But there is a strength of mind that comes. Let me share something with you real quick. If you go to Matthew chapter 4, I'll give you the verse in a second. Matthew chapter 4, just verse number 1 is fine. Matthew chapter 4 and verse number 1. And it says that then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. It is interesting that one of the things that the Lord worked so that Jesus would feel was weakness, right? Because when Jesus was led out to the wilderness, right, he felt the weakness of his flesh, which in this case was what? Hunger, right? Appetite, a desire for something, like your body is telling you, you need this, you want this, right? We know what it feels like, right? To have a strong desire for something, right? Jesus felt that. In other words, he allowed himself to go through this so that he could feel, what does deep hunger feel like? I mean, what does it feel to not eat for 40 days, over a month without eating, right? Over a month without eating. And it says that the Spirit of the Lord then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, afterward he was hungry. So he felt a desire, right? The desire was to eat. He felt hungry, right? And obviously, what is it that the devil wants to do? Take the desire that is in the body, right? And make you do things, right? Just to get your eyes off of what God has done, right? Just to get your eyes off of Jesus, right? And Here, what he does, he says, it's not now when it says when the tempter came to him, he said, if you are the Son of God, right away, to get him to doubt. From his perspective it wasn't about the work of Jesus. He is Jesus, obviously. So it's what he would do, right? To get him to doubt who he was and who he came, the purpose why he came for us, right? So if you are the Son of God, it says, command these stones to become bread. Why? To meet his need, right? There are lots of things that the devil works today, just tricks and lies that he puts in your mind, that you get a desire, and he wants to get you to think of ways, right, through the use of other people. I tell you another powerful thing, commercials are a very powerful thing, right? Listen, let's not be naive, okay? Let's not act like children, like we don't know that every commercial is intended for you to go chase after something, and it's not Jesus. Something, anything. Food, a hamburger, a car, a trip, a vacation, it's something. They want you chasing after something. Forget about let God add it to you. No. Don't wait for God to do nothing. Get it and get it now, and you can get it on credit, and you can get it because you need it, and you deserve it, and you've worked for it, right? That is the idea, right? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out, right? It's about getting your mind off of the one that has said, I have put everything on the inside of you, and I know what you need before you even ask me, and I will add all of these things to you if you just seek me and learn of my love for you, right? But instead, the thing is not wait on the Lord, right? Let him add these things. No, it's get it now. You need it now. Rush now. Do it now. Pay now. Now. Do it now, right? That's how the voice comes across in that commercial, right? Right? Do it now, right? Act now, right? Anyway, but listen to how cool this is. In verse number 4, immediately Jesus answered with what? Truth, right? See, this is what it looks like. And we'll go into Ephesians 6 in a bit, but this is what it looks like in practice. This is what it looks like if you were looking at it from the outside in. This is what it looks like to be, right, to have your mind guarded. This is what it looks like to have your mind protected. What does it look like? The devil tempts you with something and you respond with what God has said. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. It was just hunger. Listen, if you have a problem with overeating and everything that you do is around food, whether it be if you're upset, if you're depressed, it's food. If you want to relax, it's about food. If you go on vacation, it's about food. And everything is about food. If you go out, it's about food. If you're having fun, it's around food. Everything that you do is about food, right? That's not a good thing, right? So if that is your life, if your life is about food, that's an awesome thing that the Lord can bring to your mind. He said, the life that I give you, the fun that I want to give you is not dependent on food. In other words, it's not dependent on something perishable. There are people that have taken it so far that we even call it comfort food, right? Food that would comfort you, right? And listen, I know, there's an element that I see your guys' smiles. There's an element of, humor to that. But it's pitiful though, right? It's a ridiculous way to live. That your eye, listen, so much so that you forget that God is called the Comforter, and you look to prepared foods to be your comforter. You see how ridiculous that sounds, right? That you would take comfort from stuff that you can cook, right? Instead of taking comfort from the one that you possess. See, it's all about getting your eyes away from what you have and onto something else, right? Away from what you have and onto something else. But Jesus said it very, very well. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So is eating bad? No. Is eating sin? No. It's just bad when food or anything is taking the place of Jesus in your life, right? That's when the devil can use it to blind your eyes or to make you short-sighted, where you don't see Jesus, but instead you see a hamburger. That is a problem, right? And no one will ever tell you that, right? But if you see a hamburger for comfort instead of Jesus, being a Christian, there is something desperately wrong with our thinking, right? if we take comfort from stuff, if you can take your rest from going on vacation instead of taking your rest from the Spirit of God, there's something wrong with our thinking, right? And there's lots of things wrong with our thinking. But that is why, right, the church is such an awesome thing, right? So we can be an encouragement to one another. Listen, there are things, and I'll tell you right now, and this is, I don't know if it's true of someone right now, but it will be true of you soon, right? Is the way it feels inside, right? Right now, the greatest truth that you could hear is what God has done for you. And you hear that in this church over and over and over again, right? Here's a temptation that will come to you. Leave because you were offended. Leave because you were, listen, I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to offend you at some point, right? Because I am not perfect in everything that I say and the way that I say it. And sometimes you can take offense to something and I didn't even mean to do it and didn't do anything, and you just interpreted something that way. But offense is something that will exist. But I remember something that Pastor Mike had said a long time ago. We would never obviously do this. But if you came in the door and the greeter slapped you in your face, the minute you came in the door, the greeter just slapped you in the face the minute you came in. But if you heard the truth, I would keep coming. After that slap in the face, I would keep coming, right? And just talk to somebody about maybe removing the greeter, because you ought not to be slapped in the face. I know that's a very extreme example. But do you understand the stupidest reasons in the world that people leave churches? What happened? Like, what's going on? I thought you, because people have told us stuff, all kinds of stuff. Finally, a church that preaches this and does that, all of this gaga stuff. And then the minute, why are you living? Oh, the pastor didn't say good morning to me, or some stupid thing like that. Like what? Listen, what is the essential, most important thing for you to receive at a church? The gospel. If they don't have a singles program, which someday we will, right? If we don't have a mommy's play club, I don't know what it is, right? But what is the most important thing? The gospel. So that we can teach you to fall in love with Jesus and to make your life all about you loving Jesus and fall in love all over again with your family, first and foremost, and fall in love with everyone that there is in the world, including your enemies. To be in love with even your enemies, right? To love them. Doesn't mean you let them walk over you, but you love them still, right? You don't want bad to come to them. You want them to receive the gospel, right? But what is better than that? For you to be completely in love with God, in love with Him and what He's done, and head over heels for your family, right? With such a peace that's coming into your home because of the way the Lord is working in and through you, right? Nobody can give you that. Just the gospel, right? Just that message. Anyway, but listen, if you feel and you sense a temptation to leave, I pray that you would leave, because you know what? I am not getting taught the love of God at this church. I am not getting taught about what Jesus has done for me, right? Instead, I'm being taught what I have to do for God and my works for Him. Then you know what? If you're in a place like that where you're hearing stuff that's anti-Christ, then you should get up and leave, right? But if it's not that, then just, you know what? Let's just all grow up a little bit, making in the Lord is what I mean, right? Mature in the Lord, so that you can know that you have to make allowances for me and I have to make allowances for you. Because you know what? Just like you can get offended by me, you sure as heck can offend me as well, right? So you make allowances for people the same way that I make allowances for my wife. I love my wife, right? But she could offend me and I could offend her, right? Just like your kids can offend you and you can offend them, right? But you make allowances for one another. Why? Because you love them, right? Well, church is the same way, right? If a church is teaching you the love of God, right? Make allowances for one another so that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Anyway, let's go from there. Verse number 5, it says, then the devil took him up into the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple. And he said to him, if you are the Son of God, again, lying to him, getting him to question who he was and what he came for. Throw yourself down, for it is written, right? He shall give his angels charge over you, right? And in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus said to him, see, even the devil can quote scripture, but how do you know the difference between what Jesus is quoting and what the devil is quoting? Jesus is quoting what God has given to him, the abundance that he has from the glory of God that is in him. The devil is getting him to doubt who he is, and getting him to test God, right? It's so simple. It is so simple. It's either exalting the work of Jesus Christ and rejoicing in what you have in you, what you've been given by the grace of God, right? Or everything else. Everything else. And it has many, many facets, right? Everything else, right? It's like a tree of life, one tree of life in the middle of every other tree that's out there. Everything else, right, that you could get. See, the fruit that Eve ate of, right, what she took was not from that tree. It was from the other trees. It wasn't that tree. It was all the other ones. And it looked good. And maybe she was hungry, right? And gave her husband to eat, right? It's just, it's always the same thing. It's always the same thing. And when you get a hold of tricks and when you can easily discern and see the truth, then it's easy for you to tell the difference, right? Easy for you to tell the difference, right? And even if sometimes, listen, if you feel impotent and weak in front of a temptation, it's okay, because you can rejoice in that, because you can give thanks to God and you can begin to rehearse in your own mind, but look at what I have inside of me. And God is my temperance, and I can move in the power of God, in a power that is supernatural and abnormal to this world, right? Supernatural and abnormal to this world. So now you don't feel weak anymore, but in your weakness, you're made strong. In your weakness, right in the center of your weakness, you can be made strong, right? Just acknowledging the Lord, right? Acknowledging the Lord right in the center of your weakness, which, by the way, it's everything that we do. The flesh is weak in everything. That's why Paul said, have no confidence. No confidence. Philippians chapter 3, I believe, 3 or 4. Have no confidence in the flesh. Like, he wants you to lose confidence in your ability. Lose confidence in it. I get it. You know, parents generally raise their children to have confidence in their ability, right? As I was raising my kids, I was doing the opposite, right? Teaching them to trust in the Lord. Teaching them to acknowledge God in all of their ways. No, you can't do everything that you set your mind to. But with God, you can do all things through God who makes you strong, right? It's not the same as the world, right? It's not the same as the world. It's making children not be confident in the flesh, but confident in the Spirit of God that they receive, right? So that when they're at an age where they can understand and receive Him, they've heard it enough where they understand and say, you know what? I need salvation. I need salvation, right? That is an awesome thing, right? To teach your children. Not to be confident in their own ability, right? But to be confident in Jesus, right? To be confident in Jesus. Have their confidence. Let Jesus be their confidence. Verse number 7, Jesus answered that temptation. It is written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God, right? Jesus loved the Lord. He didn't want to tempt the Lord, right? He loved him. Right? He loves the Lord, I should say, right? Again, the devil took him up in verse number 8 on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all of the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to them, and the devil still uses that today with people all across. You want power, it's about money. You want power, it's about position. You want to be accepted, it's about, you ruling over the poor. It's not knowing. And that's why the Lord, when he sees people that take all of their glory in their life just from their position and their finance, he says, you don't see that you're actually naked, poor, and blind, right? Because they actually don't have anything, right? They have nothing that they can hold on to, right? They have nothing, there's nothing sure. There's nothing that they can actually confide in, right? All that has to happen is the market change, right? And I tell you, the stock market, if you think you could trust in the economy, I mean, listen, people, the stock market, which is basically the backbone of the U.S. economy, changes because of things people say. Not even because of the cost of stuff. It's just because somebody coughed the wrong way and your stocks will change, right? Right? Listen, the more you learn, right, about the Lord, you really see, my gosh, this stuff is like sinking sand, right? Right? Just trusting in what this world has to offer is like standing on sinking sand. Thank God we've known better now. Verse number 9, he said to him, all of these things I will give to you. I will give you if you fall down and worship me. And Jesus said to him, away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve, right? Only worship the Lord, right? That's just such an awesome thing. You don't have to worship people. You don't have to worship, your spouse. You don't have to worship the ground that anybody walks on, right? You don't have to worship yourself. You don't have to worship other people. You don't have to worship politicians, right? You don't have to worship any human being. You just worship and serve the Lord, and that is it, right? Just him, just him. That way, you know how awesome it is to be able to have the gospel and to feel bold enough to be able to speak to dignitaries without having to feel impotent because of somebody that was appointed to some role in a country. He's just a person. He's just a person, and he needs the gospel desperately. You're the rich one. He's the poor one, right? But so many people feel intimidated to speak in front of people. Intimidated because of what people will say about them. Intimidated because of what some rich man is going to think about the fact that you don't have the right house or the right car. Listen, it's just lack of knowledge of Jesus that we're missing. That's all. Because we haven't understood who we are, right? Kings and priests, right? My God, who the Lord has lifted up. That's an awesome thing to remember. Awesome thing to remember. In Romans chapter 4, real quick, let's go there. Romans chapter 4 and just verse number 1. Just an awesome thing to be able to see. You know, I quoted Paul several times about what Paul found about the flesh, right? Have no confidence in it. He talked about the flesh as, don't trust in it. But here you see that even Abraham, verse number 1 says, what then shall we say that Abraham our father according to the faith, has found according to the flesh? What did Abraham, the man that is said to be for the Jewish nation and even us today, right? One that received the gospel even before the old covenant even was, received the covenant that we enjoy today through Jesus Christ, right? What did he find about his own flesh? What did he find out about his own body, about his own position, about what he can trust in and who he can rely on? Verse number 2 says, for if Abraham was justified by his works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. For what the scriptures say, Abraham just believed God, and he was made righteous. It was accounted unto him for righteous, right? He was made righteous. Now to him who works, the wages are not counted as grace, but as debt. So what Abraham found, it says that he didn't even consider his own body, which was as good as dead. Listen, we're talking about a man who God told him, believe me, right? Believe me, and I will make you a father of many nations. That was speaking about us, right? That we would be children of Abraham. People of other nations would be children to this man who wasn't even Jewish yet, right? Who became, if you want to say, the first Jew, right? But he would be our father in the faith, right? He said, just believe me. Just do that one thing. You've heard that taught here how many times? That there is one thing to do. How many things do you do many times in your day? Many more things than just that one thing. And what does that bring to you? Listen, Pastor Jose, I don't know why I'm so stressed out. I know why you're so stressed out. And you know why. All you got to do is think about it for 2 minutes. The only way that you would ever get stressed out if you're doing more than one thing. The Lord told Martha, he says, you are encumbered about with many things, many worries. Why? Because Mary did one thing and you were doing many. And what happens with people that work many things is that they wonder why you aren't helping them to do many things too, right? Why aren't you as overworked and as stressed as I am? Wipe that smirk off of your face, Mary, and get over here and be miserable with me, right? That's the idea, right? Why can't you come over here and be miserable with me too, right? Trying to get people away. Listen, the trick, because they are just subtle tricks of the devil. It's not this big power. It's just subtle tricks. He can't touch a hair on your head. The devil cannot touch a hair on your head, right? Because even those are numbered, right? Not a hair on your head, right? All he can do is come up with stupid tricks. And it's the same story every time. Simple. Get your eyes off of what Jesus did for you. And anything else, get it on whatever else you want. Call it a hobby. That's called obsessions, by the way, is another way to say a hobby. It's an obsession, right? You have to have another one of those stupid things that you already got 100 of. For whatever reason, get people to collect all kinds of dumb things, right? You can't possibly use them all, so forget about generosity and giving to others. Just call it a hobby, which means you collect stupid stuff. That's what a hobby is. You collect dumb things, because things that perish, people throw wealth and huge amounts of wealth. The more wealth they make, the more fancy the item that they could get, and we call it a hobby, right? The devil calls that a distraction, right? That's all that it is. It's just one other thing that can take your eyes away from the Lord, right? And I get it. People get a little protective about their hobby. That ought to tell you something right there. If you're protective about a hobby, we're not talking about protective about your child. It's about the thing that you collect that has no life, right? This thing that you collect. It could be rusty things. It could be cars. It could be whatever, right? There's nothing wrong with having stuff. It's just the stuff doesn't have to have your mind, though. You see what the problem is? The thing that we're trying to keep, that the Lord wants to keep straight and focused, is just your mind. That's all. But you'll notice, it's so easy for you to see, right? If your mind can't just be stayed on the Lord because all you're thinking about is going on Amazon or eBay or whatever, and you think about, I think about it all day long. People say it. Sometimes people, even Christians, say that to me, and they think they're saying a cute thing. Oh, I just love this stuff so much. I think about it all the time. Yeah. So you just think you just told me a good thing or something? That you do whatever you do so much that you think about that all of the time. You know what that tells me? The one that you're not thinking about is what that tells me. The one that you're not thinking about. So listen, the Lord said it, even Paul said it, right? You can do whatever you want. You just don't have to be brought under the power of it, though, right? Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want to do, right? And the Lord will teach you that, right? You can do whatever. You can have fun, you can play games, you can enjoy yourself, right? It just doesn't have to be your life, right? People say that, oh, such and such a thing, it's just my life, it's what I live for, right? People have actually told me that about going to restaurants. They live for that. That's my thing, right? I know, when you say that's your thing, the one that you're excluding not being your thing is Jesus, because you can't love both your thing and your thing. You can't have two things. You can't love mammon and God, right? You're going to love one of them, right? And the more that you love God, the more this other thing is going to be offended that you're not loving it anymore, right? One of those two masters is going to get offended, right? Just loving God. Listen, the trickery is the same. It's the same thread through every single trick, right? With mothers sometimes and dads, right? New dads. Your children are your life, right? They ought not to be, he is your life, right? You are assigned as a parent the task of raising your children and preaching to them and ministering to them so that when they become young adults, right, they can love God too. That's it. Because apart from that, they're basically your brothers and sisters in Christ. That's what they are going to be. Your brothers and sisters in Christ, right? That's what they will be. Anyway, so let's keep going from there. So that's what Abraham found, right? He found that he didn't have to look at the deadness of his body. He didn't have to look at, the deadness in his wife's body, right? It's not a good practice for you to constantly point out things that you see that are changing in your wife's body. Because you know what? If you have that eye, chances are your body is changing just the same way, right? Stop pointing out, right, the faults in other people's lives, because you know what that means? You do it to yourself all day long. If you are awesome at pointing out people's faults, you're awesome at pointing out your own, right? Let the Lord be the one to show you. Listen, when you can see weakness, right, help people, including yourself, right, to be strong in the Lord. If somebody is talking to you about a weakness that they have, they feel sick, something is wrong, remind them about what the Lord has done. That is what the church is for. Not just preachers are for, that's what the church is for, right? So that a husband and a wife can be people that remind themselves, right, remind one another about what God has done for them. Listen, when you watch a sitcom, what is the most prevalent and funny thing that the world likes? A husband putting down his wife and a wife putting down her husband. That is hilarious to the world, right? That is the funniest thing you can watch. Just show a woman humiliating her husband. That just makes for great entertainment, right? God does the exact opposite. Build up one another, right? Build one another up. Remind each other who you are, right? Tell each other who you are, right? Encourage each other in the Lord, right? But listen, this world does it even with humor, so it can be so subtle that you begin to think that way. And so it becomes an acceptable thing because anyway, men, they're so stupid. They just want one thing. That's normal for the world. For you to think about your own husband, that all your husband wants is one thing and he doesn't just really want you, right? That is a normal thing for people to inject, so much so that even your husband begins to believe that, right? Or you begin to believe that everything is about you and that it's all about, a woman, she's all about just shopping and getting her thing and her bling and whatever it is, stupid other things that people say, right? But see, with God, it's the opposite though, right? He begins to teach you how to truly love someone, which is to minister the good news about what Jesus has done for her and who you are in Christ, right? And in every way you can begin to encourage. See, that's what love is. When you learn how to do that in your household, right? You will be able also to do it outside, right? But here is where you kind of let your hair down. So when you know that if it's coming out of the abundance of your heart, when you don't do it in front of people to be seen by men, but instead you're doing it in your own household, right? That means it's abundantly in your heart. That's what you want, right? You want it to be abundantly in your heart. Abundantly in your heart. The funny thing is, here's why it's awesome. Even in anything that I said to you, let's say you thought, man, I guess I do that myself. I say that to my husband. Or you, as a husband, you say, yeah, I say that to my wife. Or I do that, or I think like that. Here's the awesome thing about that. If that is something that you just spotted as a weakness, you don't even have to stare at that. Just what did the Lord do to make you strong in that area? See, you can be strong in the Lord in the very area that you just think right now, I'm a little weak in that area, because I don't know everything yet. So because of my lack of knowledge, that's why I still do that. But no. Leverage the strength of God that you have on the inside of you. In other words, let your mind become strong in that area so that the very thing that you said about yourself, that you were an introvert, is the very thing that the Lord gives you and puts in your mind, that you are bold in your heart, right? Bold to speak, right? Let him be the one to change your mind, renew your mind by the truth, right? And you'll see that thought no longer will linger, right? That thought, see, let me tell you this thing. I was thinking about it yesterday because there was this little saying that I grew up with. It was very popular in my time because of a brand that said that men think about sex all day long. And then there's even science that will back that up, right? That basically, how many times a day, and I'm sure women, it's the same thing, right? But how many times do people without the Lord have a sexual thought in their mind? But you know what? If you ever identified with that ever, which I grew up thinking that was normal, I was actually taught that, and you heard it, right, over and over again, even in a brand, that's what men do, right? And then you learn from the Lord that it's not that at all, that even in that He is the one that becomes your temperance and gives you the desires of your heart. So now instead of you being ruled by hunger for anything, or a strong desire for anything at all, right? That now the Lord can take and renew that and give you His desires, where you then have a desire for the strong desire, strong feelings to be with Him, to spend time with Him, to know Him, to love Him, right? Desires from God, right? Desires from the Lord. So nothing that I said, even though I probably used more examples than I needed to, right? You don't have to major on the thing that you think identified you, but instead you identify with the Lord, right? Identify with Him and say, you know what, Lord, this is an area that I can be strong in, right? I'll tell you one thing. Samson, you see him, which even Hebrews 11 talks about the fact that in his weakness, he was made strong. So one of the great examples of physical strength in the Bible, right? Abnormal physical strength was Samson, right? He was a judge. I would say he wasn't intended to be like, the power lifter to the Jews. He was intended to be a judge. In other words, someone that had the judgment of God, right? But you clearly see, you look at his life, you said, he's a judge? Like, how the heck is he a judge, right? But the Lord was able to work through him where even though it was out of custom, he he had a strong desire from God for a woman that was not a Jew, that was of a different, I want to say Moab, but it wasn't Moab that I know of, right? But here's the thing, he had a strong, she was a Philistine, I think, right? A strong desire for her, right? But the Bible clearly says that desire was actually from God, because the depiction there, right, in his life is that Jesus Christ came to his own, and his own didn't receive him. So instead, what he did is he went to the nations, to the Gentiles, right, and got a wife from the Gentiles, right? What Samson did is he told his father, he came to his father and said, "Get her for me, for she pleases me well." And it said when he met the woman, he said that of her, "She pleases me well," right? It's exactly what happened with the church, right? With us, right? We were those that pleased God, right? Because without faith, it is impossible to please God. So we pleased God by our faith, right? We pleased God by our faith. So he married us instead of marrying her, right? The Jewish nation initially, who was the first that he went to, right? And instead came out to the nations, to the Gentiles, which is why Abraham was called the father of many nations, right? And not a father to the Jewish nation, but a father to many nations. But you see in Samson's life, though, you see all of these little shortfalls. But that, if you were looking, you would see that in your own life. You would see that in anyone's life, right? But the thing about Samson, though, is that any exertion of strength was because of his faith. In other words, there is no receiving supernatural power of any kind from God apart from faith. That's why Hebrews 11 says that the time would fail us to speak about Samson and Gideon and Jephthah, right? Because these men, it says, they brought down nations, and it says in their weakness they were made strong. So Samson's strength was actually out of an acknowledgement of his weakness. It didn't even have to be, listen, it wouldn't shock me if Samson was not really this big, huge, muscular guy, right? And it's just, what you could see is just the glory of God, the power of God working in and through him. The cool thing is that, as long as he had his mind right about the Lord in just that little area of his life, strength, physical strength, the Lord would work through him in that area. And so it is a lot of times in our lives the same way, right? You see us working, the Lord working through us in an area, but in other areas you see weakness kind of shining through. All that we need to do is do what Paul did, right? And begin to boast in our weakness so that the power of Christ could rest upon him. See, with Samson it said that the power of God would rest on him. That means it would come upon his body, right? That's what we want with every area of our lives, as we learn to love the Lord, right? And learn about the things that he has done in every single area of our life. The power of God will rest on you in that area. That area that you're weak is the area that then you'll be strong in. People will see the strength of God in that area in your life, right? In that area of your life. Let me show you real quick. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 12, right? And we got to wrap up in like 5 minutes, right? 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse number 7. Lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, which was a messenger of Satan. Just another thing, right? Somebody speaking to the same tricks, the same thing. It's just messengers, people that speak, right? A messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength. Listen to what he says. My strength is made perfect in weakness. My strength, the Lord is saying, my power is made perfect in your inability. My ability is seen in your inability. Why? Because it's in your inability that you acknowledge the Lord, right? And then when you learn that the flesh, you can't confide in the flesh for anything, then you begin to acknowledge the Lord in all of your ways, because you realize, I don't want to trust the flesh for any of this stuff. I don't want to trust it for for anything in my life, right? I just want to acknowledge the Lord in every single way, in your work, in your parenting. You know what? If you were to ask God, Lord, am I a good parent? Right? The Lord would say, no. Apart from me, you're not a good parent. You're not. So if you thought you were, let me just tell you this, you're not. Are you a good son to your mother? You're not. You're not. Are you a good employee? You're not. right? You know why? Because to the same employer that you kiss up to is the same one that you have bad thoughts about, that you can't wait until they retire so you can take their position, right? Apart from Jesus, we are not good. We're not good at anything, right? And why is that? Because we will always fail at everything that we attempt to do. Everything. You will try to be a good parent and you'll fail. Fail repeatedly, you will fail. But with Christ, you can be such a supernatural parent, right? That you would see miracles in the life of your children, miracles in your household, right? Supernatural things happening in your children's life. And all you did was say, Lord, I cannot be a good parent, Lord, but I know that with you, I can be the best parent that I need to be to my little girl. The best parent that I can be, right? Through Jesus Christ. You can be the best employee, the best husband, the best spouse, the best creator, the best whatever, the best mechanic, the best anything with Christ. That's what he says in Philippians chapter 4. He said, I can do all things, right? All things through Christ. Not just by yourself because you put your mind to it, through Christ. I get it, it's not popular, right? And how many times have you ever heard, are you a good parent? And for a preacher to be able to emphatically tell you, no, you are not. You're not. But I can tell you that because Romans 3 says it all day long. There are none that are good, not even one. Your mom, if she didn't know Jesus, was not a good mother, right? She wasn't. She just did the best that she could with what she knew, right? She wasn't a good mother. He wasn't a good father, right? Because they just did the best that they could with what they knew. So you don't hold it against them. You just want them to receive Jesus. That's all, right? And if they didn't receive Jesus, that's between them and God. It's not between them and you. It's between them and God, and you forgive, and you just keep on going, right? You just keep on going, right? You just keep on going. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I would rather boast in my weakness, infirmity. I would rather boast in my weakness that the power of Christ may rest upon me. That's Samson all day long, right? The power of God resting on him, and he able to be delivered out of any trick, out of anything. He was able to be delivered out of it, any trick, right? But here's where I'm going to end for you, because I only got about a minute here. In Ephesians chapter 6, and verse number 10, and this is a good finally, because finally is the end here, right? Verse number 10 says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord, not in yourself, right? Not in yourself, strong. The desire of God for you is that you would be strong in everything that you do. A strong student, right? The best in class in everything. Best in class in everything. In everything, not in some things. In everything, best in class. In everything, in parenting, in grandparenting, right? I want to be the best in class grandpa, or pop-up, the way my grandson calls me, right? Best in class. How do you do that? Just acknowledge him. Acknowledge him. Acknowledge him in that. You stink at it. Acknowledge him at it, right? Acknowledge him. Acknowledge him. Acknowledge him. My God, acknowledge him. He's finally be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. His strength, not yours, his strength. You are not strong enough. You're not strong enough and you never will be. But with him, you are strong in the power of his might, right? Put on then the whole armor of God. In your mind, guard it with all of these ways that we're going to read real quick. Guard it in all of those ways. It says, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the silly tricks of the devil. It's always the same stuff. Get your eyes on your ability, not God's. Come on. You're not bad. You heard Pastor Jose say that you're not a good parent. How many good things do you not do for your children? Of course you're a good parent. He's just excited. You're a good parent. Don't worry. Look at underneath the cover. What is he really saying to you, right? What is that thought from the world, obviously because the devil's not speaking into your mind. What is that thought from the world actually saying? Don't rely on Jesus for that aspect of your life. You don't need him. But he would never come right out and say that to you. Never. Because that's obvious, right? That's obvious. Who in the world would tempt you that way? Listen, don't rely on Jesus even though you have everything from him. Instead, rely on yourself even though, that'll lead you to failure, right? It'll never be that obvious. It's always, no, you're good. This is so good for you. That's how you do it. You got to be confident in yourself. Love yourself. Have confidence in yourself. You can do it. right? Sounds like inspirational speakers, right? That doesn't amount to anything, right? Doesn't amount to anything, right? We just got to be, listen, sometimes Christians, we're a little gullible, right? A little gullible, just like the whole world is gullible, but we don't need to be gullible. We can be wise like serpents, right? And be like, you know what? I'm not that stupid, right? I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying, but I know the truth, and you respond with the truth, right? You respond with the truth. Don't let the devil try to get your eyes off of who you have been made, right? Sorry, I digress a little bit. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness, the blindness of this world. How is the world blinded? To Jesus. The world can see everything else except him. The world can see everything else except the Spirit of God, right? The one thing you want to do is not live like that, where you can see everything except him. You want to see him and be blind to everything else, right? It's the exact opposite, right? The exact opposite. You look at yourself. Do you judge yourself by looking at the mirror, right? Oh, I'm getting old. I'm getting fat. I'm not beautiful anymore. Where did my butt go? Right? All this stupid stuff, right? Getting to judge. Listen, stop beholding yourself and behold him. He will make you young, right? He will keep you like a Sarah, beautiful as an older woman already. And still to have a king that had his pick of all the women in his kingdom, pick that woman, like he must have not known she was like 93, right? But looked beautiful, right? You don't get beautiful by focusing on your beauty. You get beautiful by focus on the beautiful one, right? As a guy, you don't have to flex in front of the mirror every single time. He will keep you healthy. He will rejuvenate your body, right? Stop judging yourself by your sight. Stop judging yourself by your sight. Jesus lived the exact opposite of that. He said he did not judge by the sight of his eyes or by the hearing of his ears. How do most Christians live? By the sight of their eyes and by the hearing of their ears, right? You're going to be tempted to do stuff by the sight of your eyes and by the hearing of their ears, right? We know better already than that. Focus on the truth of what you already have, and you'll not be tempted to go out and get anything else. You got it already. Listen, when the devil tempts you about going to get something, just think, right? A commercial is coming out, and it's the exact thing that you wanted, right? I mean, it just happened to be like the exact thing. Look at even the way the world works in social media and on websites. And I'll stop shortly here after this, right? But how does it work? They want to understand what you search for so they can show it to you over and over and over and over again. Repeatedly. I wonder why that is, right? To tempt you over and over and over again with the same thing, right? But how do you overcome that? Understand the fullness, the exceeding greatness of what you already have in you, so that you can see that you are in need of nothing. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want anything, because I am the owner of everything already. If you need something, you'll have it. You'll have it without any sorrow. Without having to give up on relationships with people that you love, without having to give up on anything in your time at work, without having to be a workaholic in order to achieve something, the Lord will add it to you without any sorrow. Without any sorrow, he'll add it to you. Without any sorrow. You know what you ought to do? Get an ad blocker so the stuff can't track you, right? So that you can look for what you want when you want it, and nobody needs to know what you're searching for. Anyway, the blindness of this age he talks about there. Verse number 13 says, therefore take up the whole armor of God. The whole thing. The whole thing. You don't have all of it yet. I don't have all of it yet. Get it. The whole armor. How do you get it? Listen. That's it. Listen. Be a Mary at the feet of Jesus. Just listen. What do I got to do? Listen. How do I get that, Pastor? Listen. Just be at his feet hearing him. He says, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. And having done all, what that means is having done all of this that I just told you, the whole armor, having done all of those, put that on your mind, right? Having done all to stand then. Because he says, now you're able to stand. Stand therefore. Having done what? What is the whole armor? He says, your waist with truth, right? The gospel is truth, right? His word is truth. Having put on the breastplate of righteousness, right? That's something that's an awesome thing to put on your head. Nobody can say that you don't have access to the things of God. No one can say that, no one can accuse you of anything. You're righteous, you've been justified. What are you talking about, trying to make me feel guilty because of something that I've done? I'm the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus, right? Right? You don't have to make anybody else feel guilty either, right? It fulfills the law. You're loving people, right? Not making them feel guilty either, right? And having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace, you're ready to bring that good news to other people, right? You brought it to your family, you're ready to bring it to somebody else, to other people. Above all, taking the shield of faith, right? With which you will be able to quench all, don't you love that stuff? All of them. Every little dumb trick that he comes at you with, you can quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one, right? Whether they've come through commercials, Google, whatever, anything, right? Right? Your firewall is all the way up. Nothing can penetrate your mind, right? Nothing can penetrate your mind. And take on, he says, the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication and being watchful to this end. Here's why it's good to end there. Being watchful to this end is just being awake. Listen, the idea of the devil is just to lull you to sleep. It's okay for you to be saved. Just be asleep. Right? In other words, being asleep is being caught up with the 99,999 things around you instead of just the one. Instead of just the one. Right? Instead of just the one. Right? I mean, listen, it could be something where you're saying, you know what? I got to be married. I mean, I got to be married like now. I got to be married. I mean, like that's the thing. I mean, listen, it is so much so that people raise their daughters just to be able to be the wife of some guy. Right? But why would we ever do that? Why would we ever do that? Teach your daughter to be a bride to Jesus Christ, right? And the Lord will be the one to bring the one that she ought to be married if it's a desire from God for her to be married. Does a woman have to be married? No. Does a man have to be married? No. 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 Do you have to go to college? No. No, you don't have to. Who told you that? Who said that in order for you to prosper in this world, you have to go to college? I bet you Jesus didn't say that to you. I bet you the world told you that. Let the Lord point out to you. If he wants you to go, he'll show you which way to go, right? But no one should expect a 17-year-old to figure out the rest of their life. You can't. You stink at it. You stink at life. Right? And your parents, apart from Jesus, stink at it too, right? So instead what we do is you rest on the Lord and say, you know what, Lord? I'm not going to try to figure out my own life, Lord. Instead, I'm going to lean on you and I'm going to acknowledge you. And if there is something that you want me to learn that you think is going to be the one thing that you can use in my life to prosper me, then show me what that is. Give me a desire for it, right? And make sure that that it's praying always, being sober-minded, right? Not growing up, I'll tell you this one story, I'm so sorry, but all the stuff they were doing with the announcement brought us over, but I'll just tell you this one thing. All of my life, my dad told me that I was going to be a military man. All of my life. The entirety of my life. As far back as I can remember, you're going to be a military man. Guess what I did when I was 17 when I graduated high school? Just take a wild guess what I did, right? The minute, I'm talking about like almost hours after graduating, my dad's like, all right, see ya. And I don't know if because he wanted one less mouth to feed, I don't know what his thing was, but it was like he was getting rid of me. I was gone. He sent me to New York City from Dominican Republic to live with some lady that I had never even met before, to just go to the recruiter's office and join. And that's exactly what I did. You know how long I lasted in the Navy? 18 months. 18 months. With I had a mind set on doing it. And you know, actually, all that happened, the Lord said, nope, I got different plans for you, right? You know who I met there while I was in the Navy? Miss Kim, right? And ended up in Middletown, where she lived. And today I'm a preacher of the gospel, right? But did I have to go through the Navy? No. I could have just moved from Dominican Republic right to Middletown. And I didn't have to go through what I went through. I was stabbed on the bottom of my stomach, and the man that stabbed me was a Marine. He left a knife in my stomach and went up through my rib cage, and he stopped when he got to this side of my chest, right? And that could have been it, right? Done, right? But obviously the Lord had different plans, right? Different than my dad's plan. My dad did the best that he can. I don't badmouth my father, my dad, right? He did the best that he could with what he had, which was not much, right? Because he didn't have Jesus, so that means he didn't have much. But he did the best that he could. I love my dad, right? I love my dad. But his plan for me was not good. He had the best intentions for me, but it just was not a good plan because it wasn't the plan of God, right? Right? That could have just brought me death, but instead God brought me life out of that, right? Let the Lord be the one to teach you, right? To show you what is the next step for tomorrow. What is the next step that I'm doing next year? Let him be the one to guide you and lead you a step that look to him.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this uncommon truth out to the world. If you'd like to support this good news, you can do so at reformedchurch.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reformedchurch.com.